so incredibly many ways to get around the chords in a jazz tune. But the most characteristic one is connecting all these beautiful 8-note lines into long strings of beautiful phrases, playing over more bars and making these beautiful jazz melodies. But maybe you think this sounds very difficult. And how do these players actually connect all these strings of tones? And how do you connect the chords that they sound great? And how do you play these beautiful melodic lines with the long phrases? In this video I want to dig into exactly this. How can we play beautifully connecting lines over the chord schemes of the tunes we are playing? And for this I would start out with the great player Stan Getz, here playing on There Will Never Be Another You. These are the first 4 bars of the tune where he's playing this incredible simple line, but so rhythmical. Because I really do not want to start out with all the notes. It just makes it very complicated. Let's start with the rhythm. Stan Getz is playing this rhythm in the phrase. And in between each phrase he takes a small break to get a breather in between all the sentences. So let's start building on this approach. When I'm looking to pick a tune I want to play on for these phrases, I almost always take a very easy tune like Autumn Leaves because it has an easy progression and it's in C major. Even though I really want to focus on some of the rhythmic aspects of this part, we need some tone material anyways, so I'll start with the chords in the scale. And of course expanding it into the scales of the tune. And with this basic, the chords and the scales, we can actually get going. So let's look at this phrase of Stan Getz and make a simple version of this on Autumn Leaves. Take this rhythmic approach of Stan Getz and add it directly onto the chords of your tune. And here we are, I just put some tones into the tune of Autumn Leaves and it sounds like a solo. But if you think this is crazy and it suddenly appeared here, let's check out what we did. So the first bar, this D minor, on that D minor I play the D minor arpeggio, only the D minor arpeggio. Then as Stan Getz, I take a small break and then I go into the G7. On the G7 I play a little part of the G7 scale. You see that I play the scale part between the 5th and the 3rd of the G7. And this is absolutely the best scale hack I ever found out. Playing the scale tones between the chord tones of the chord, of course. Starting and ending on a chord tone, you always sound like you're playing inside the chord and making the chord sound like the function it has. On the C major I play the C upper structure, the E minor triad. And that E minor triad just sounds amazing because you're basically leaving out the C, which is a pretty dull note. And at the end on the F major I play a little bit of the scale, exactly as I did on the G7, but here is between the A and the F, the 3rd and the root. I love making these small lists when I'm practicing myself. If I have a certain topic, I make a list of the topic in the order of what I have to do. We need to connect these bars because that's the purpose, connecting more bars in a longer line. Target notes, what are the target notes? We need to connect the target notes. I'll come back to this. Forward motion, look forward. What are you going to hit? What target notes are you going to hit? Guide tone lines are a smooth way of hitting the target notes you want. We'll get into this right now. Connecting the bars is pretty self-explanatory. When you're connecting the bars, in the beginning we left a kind of gap in between. But the more you play this, the longer lines you get and the less gaps you actually make. The target notes I aim for are the clear target notes of the chord that spells out the function. So the target notes has very much to do with the guide tone line also, and forward motion. And forward motion and guide tone lines are almost one thing. I want to make this D minor sound like it's moving towards that G7 because else D minor just gets static. It doesn't really sound like I'm changing the chord. I'm just continuing in the line. That's forward motion. I play down that E minor triad and then I smoothly go into that A, G, F on the F major. And this approach makes the lines connect and sound logical. So when I'm connecting these lines, I'm thinking ahead, make them sound like they are a part of the same thing. And this is forward motion, thinking about the next step. The D minor 7 and the G7, I connect with this D, thinking ahead that this D sounds great there. And also looking at the D minor, G7, the C major, F major, you see that I built the same rhythmical phrase there. This is also thinking about how the movement moves in front of you. One more thing that makes the lines connect very well is guide tone lines. The guide tone line is a line that moves straight through the form of the tune. So from the top C, down to that B on the C major chord, to the A on the F7 chord. So what I'm doing with the guide tone line, I'm picking a note in my first bar. I'm moving it to the closest target note in the next bar. So now you know these basics of making longer lines connect. And you probably see the system now. Connecting the bars, playing towards the target notes using forward motion and guide tone lines. So when I play longer lines, my focus is really on how I connect the bars. And I have the material in my fingers, so I'm not thinking about the tones I'm playing, I'm really thinking about how to connect to the next bar. In the lesson manual on Patreon, I have of course added a lot of these exercises, how you can connect the bars, a lot of one bar lines that you can copy and paste into your playing, that the target notes fit, the forward motion fit, and the guide tone line fits. The lesson manual PDF is on Patreon and you can download it through the link in the description. What you see here is I'm starting to play each individual phrase a bit longer. Again, the length of the line really doesn't matter, except when you have really long lines, they basically connect the whole way and you get these beautiful long line phrases. But what is important now is the flow in the music, and you'll start hearing that doing this. This line connects at each top of the phrase, so there's your guide tone line. The C and the B of the D minor, the G7 and the C connects the lines. But basically you can connect any tone in the music as long as you think about where does it connect and how can you connect it in a beautiful way. Let's try something else. Instead of connecting through the guide tone line, let's connect the end of each bar to the next bar. So in this phrase, at the end of the D minor, I connect into the F of the G7. The G and the E surrounds that F. In the same way on the C major, I used exact the same tones, the G and the E, to surround that F on the F major chord. Another thing you might notice is that it's an incredible long first phrase. It actually first stops on the C major at the end. I want to dig a little bit deeper into connecting the ends of each phrase into the next bar and playing these longer phrases. And I want to start with the longer lines, the longer phrases. How do you make these longer phrases? Let's get back to the material we looked at in the beginning. We have the arpeggios, which we can use because they're all target notes. And then we have the scales. And if you play the chord notes in the scale, the target notes of the scale, you always play the function of the music. I basically start by making a D minor 7 arpeggio lick. I go up the D minor arpeggio, I play the scale down between the D and the A, between two chord notes. So how will I connect this into the G7? The first method is of course connecting the guide tone line, so the C top to the B on the G7. And the second method is connecting the closest way, and this is what we want to look into. I add the D minor arpeggio, I go down the scale, and then I move one step up to hit that B on the G7. So this is absolutely the closest way I can go. Then I play that scale down from the G7, from the B to the F. I want to play a new line on the C, so I'm ending on the G7, the F, and then I'm moving into the E on the C major 7. And then again on the E I connect into the F of the F major 7. Try to move the closest way into the nearest target note of the next bar. I mentioned one thing I do to practice this system. I practice a lot of one bar lines, so D minor in one bar. And of course also any other chord. Here's the G7 a couple of lines. When you practice like this, you get automatic vocabulary you can insert into your playing. So if you have a line that says you need something from the F, you just add it from the F, because you already have it in your vocabulary. As you get from A to B, you see these connections, these guide tone lines, you see the forward motion and the connecting chords. In the lesson manual PDF on Patreon, I have added plenty of lines that you can use to expand your vocabulary into getting these longer, beautiful lines. You'll see how I connect shorter, accessible lines into making these long, beautiful melodic phrases. When you're changing from short phrases to longer phrases, you also get more dynamic language. The lesson manual PDF is available on Patreon, and the link to the Patreon channel is right in the description. What I just presented was right up the alley of what Coltrane is playing. Coltrane is playing these small arpeggios and these small scale notes, and he's adding it all together to get these long, beautiful phrases. If you notice it, he also adds these small pauses in between what he's playing. I really recommend you to check out this Coltrane video. Play music, have fun.